Okay, it looks like we're ready to get started here. Welcome to the Recreation Commission meeting for December 2nd. We'll begin by acknowledging that the lands on which we gather are the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. And today online, we have Director Hillian, Director Brown, and we also have Trustee Waite. Our first item of the day is a delegation from Lush Valley. And you must be Carly. Come on up to the podium. I saw Marita was on here too. Are you presenting on your own today? Okay, great, welcome. And if you want to just press the button on that middle of that mic, I can turn you on.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's great.
You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Do you have my slide deck? Perfect. Great. So thanks so much for having me. My name's Carly Vanosh. I'm the Urban Agriculture Manager at Lush Valley. So I manage the garden that's located on the Comox Valley exhibition grounds. Marita, our ED, wanted to be here today, but she's unfortunately sick. So just wanting to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. So I'm here today to highlight the work that we've done through 2025 and talk about how the project aligns with the CVRD's strategic drivers and request ongoing support. So at Lush Valley, we envision a region where the healthy food is at the heart of community well-being. Our mission is to support the Comox Valley community to gain food systems tools, engage in just and resilient local food systems, and receive equitable access to nourishing foods. So first off, I wanted to say a big thank you. Last year, the CVRD provided funding for us to do a big expansion project on the garden. So that included new fencing and new water lines, which we used to increase the amount of food that we're able to produce on the property. And it also helps us with all the educational programming that we have going on there. So when we get the support from the CVRD, it makes a huge difference in how we're able to run programming. So just a little bit of background. The Solemn Garden is located, it's adjacent to the Farmers Market parking lot. So it's on Headquarters Road there, just off the parking lot. And it's kind of tucked in there, but if you've ever visited, it's a lovely spot. So the garden's approximately 1/3 of an acre, and after this year's expansion, it now sits around 2/3 of an acre. So a little bit of history on the space. In 2017, the Solemn Garden was created by the Mid-Island Farmers Institute as an educational garden. In 2019, SD71 became the leaseholders. So Vanier used it a little bit, but it was like largely fallow, so not a ton was going on there. In 2020, Lush started working on the site. So the lease was still held by SD71, but we started using it for cultivation and for education. In 2023, we received $5,000 from the CVRD for programming and site development. In 2024, Lush secured the lease from SD71, which was very helpful for the amount of funding that we were able to access, being the leaseholders. In 2024, the garden expansion was approved by CVRD staff, and that included funding for the fence and the water lines. And 2025, we did those projects. So this just gives a little idea of what the expansion looked like. So it's a little bit more area there. We also took out that row of privet, and that's where we put a hoop house. So just gives a bit of an idea of what the site looks like. All right, so wanting to go over what we did this year. So the first and the biggest thing was the new fencing. So with the CVRD support, we were able to hire tower fencing, and they built all of the stuff on the left of that picture is the new fence line. And you can see the expanded area that was previously sod. And so we had a private contractor come out and scrape all of the existing sod. And then with volunteer support, we were able to build these new long beds and mulch the pathways, makes it a bit easier for accessibility and for all the different people who come through the garden so that they know what to bed and what to stay out of. The next big infrastructure improvement was putting in new water lines. So we were previously operating with one spigot for the space, which is limiting a bit of where we could put the garden beds. And with CVRD support, we had Dale's Plumbing come in and install 2 new water spigots. So one kind of at the back of the garden and another in the expanded area. And this is just really helpful for irrigation, especially through the dry months. So here's a photo of the sod getting scraped. We kept everything that we scraped and we have it sitting in a compost pile. And once the roots break down a little bit, we'll be able to reuse it. We also built a hoop house this year. So we took out a bunch of privet and put in a hoop house, which will help us expand our growing season or extend our growing season. So we can go earlier in the spring, later in the fall, and then do a lot of heat lovers through the summer. And we put up this hoop house with funds secured from United Way. So we're always sort of looking for funding opportunities and funneling that into the Solemn Garden space. Another project that we did was installing an underground irrigation system. So we put drip line in all of the beds. Again, this is just going to ease the load on staff and volunteers who previously were doing a lot of hand watering. So this was another big infrastructure upgrade for us this year. So pivoting now, just to highlight the services that this garden does for the community. So throughout the season, we generally open the garden from March to November. And in that time, we facilitated 35 work parties, which had approximately 426 volunteer hours. So these are people who are coming week after week to help out in the garden and to just be involved. We also hosted 12 public workshops in the space. So on a bunch of different topics ranging from permaculture design, tree guild, fruit tree pruning. And these are open to the public, so anybody who's interested can join in. And we try to keep these as low cost as possible. So they're usually 20, 30 bucks for people to participate in these things and gain these skills and knowledge that they can then take home to their own yards or spaces. We also host 2 week-long day camp sessions with youth through the summer months. So this year we had 20 participants throughout the 2 weeks. And in the future, we're going to be collaborating with the Rec Guide to have these programs in the Rec Guide, and that will bring some funding back into the CVRD as well. We also started opening the garden on Saturdays for the farmers market, and we had 244 garden visitors come through this year. Often we're getting feedback that it's just a nice place to come and sit and relax and eat farmers market's goodies. We have moms who come in to breastfeed in the middle of the hubbub. So it's just really nice to see that the community enjoys this space, having access to this space. The next impact that this space has is the educational programming. So we run programs for youth, for seniors, for everybody in between. And as you can see here, there's also an intergenerational component. So a lot of our volunteers are seniors who are, being involved and having these community connections. In this case, this was at the day camp. So we have seniors who will volunteer during our day camps and help out with all these like crazy 7-year-olds running around in the garden. So that's always nice to see. We work with SD71, so classes will come through the garden for workshops, things like that. Hand-in-hand nature education also uses the garden as a space to have campfires. They usually cultivate a bed, things like that. So always our programs are focusing on community food security, food skills, and local agriculture. And you can see at the bottom here, feedback from a participant survey that says, my son took part in summer camp and had the best time. He learned about gardening and plants and said it was the best camp of my life. So pretty happy about that. Food production and distribution. So the food that we grow in the garden all goes back into Lush programs, and they get distributed through community partners like Connect, Senior Support Society, Better at Home. So often what we're growing is going back into the Lush kitchen and getting used for these programs. So it helps us to cut costs and to make every dollar stretch a little bit further when we can be growing things in the garden that get used in these other programs. So every year we have our season's best. This year it was beans for us. So another highlight that the garden does is again, it just provides these opportunities for recreation, wellness, active lifestyle, connection, community, belonging, reduced isolation. Yeah, so volunteers are always happy about the opportunity to connect and learn. I'm just running out of time here. So I'm going to move on to our ask. So this coming season, we have some big infrastructure upgrades that we need to do. So our storage shed is getting quite old. We need to replace that. We'd like to increase our perennial and pollinator species in the garden. Unfortunately, our utility trailer was stolen this year, which was quite an expense. Our hoop house needs some more infrastructure upgrades to it. So that kind of sits at $14,000. So we are requesting a partnership development between the CVRD and Lush Valley. So just a request for ongoing support. We provide maintenance, educational programs, and access to locally grown food, which aligns with the goals of the CVRD in an ongoing way that could be supported by the CVRD. We would provide matching funds to create a great return on investment for the CVRD. The garden is a really good news story, a colorful way for the CVRD to showcase their support and leadership for food growing, community engagement, food security, and food systems education for young and old across the CVRD on CVRD-owned ALR lands. We're grateful for your support and look forward to continuing to partner on this incredible space. Thanks so much.
Thanks for the presentation and providing such a nice overview of how that site's being utilized. I think that's really useful for the board to, see the year in review and even a little bit of history about how Luscious came to manage the site. So thanks for that. We have Director Brown online for the first question for you, if you're good for doing some Q&A.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Chair. And sorry I couldn't be there in person. I really appreciate the counting or the amount of food that you're growing. I had no idea there was that much food coming off that site, that's relatively small site. So kudos to you for that work. So I always thought of this space as a really great mechanism to teach people about local food and how to grow food and the sort of education piece and connecting people to the land piece. But I didn't understand fully how much food was coming off that site. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for that and for sharing the vast knowledge that Lush has with the community on how to do this. Love it.
Thanks so much.
And we'll go to Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. Ditto from what Dr. Brown said. Really great work happening there. I'm just wondering, just from a process perspective, wherever requests that'll come, I'm sure at a later board, but in the presentation, there was mentioned that the expenditures had been approved by CVRD staff. So I'm just wondering if this is a bucket of funding that's in operations and sits with staff, or if that's something that's coming to the rec grants.
Thanks, Director Arbor. So we're just trying to get the specific detail, but can come back to commission in future for the request that was made here today, as well as your recreation grants budgets, from 600, I believe it is. And whether that comes out of recreation grants or the exhibition ground service, we're just double checking on that. So I will have an answer for you for that today. In terms of, I think, the reference to the CVRD staff and approval of whether it was the fencing or the water lines, we have an agreement, I believe, with Lush for the site, and so there is some delegated authority through that responsibility, through that agreement.
Thank you.
And Director Grief.
Thank you much, Madam Chair, and fantastic, Hardy. Amazing. I think that in today's world, a lot of people think that food comes from a supermarket, and we all know that. So this is definitely a very key piece for educating the general public around food, and the fact that you actually can grow your own food. Bitching about the grocery bills, you can actually help with that just by turning over some sod and planting some seeds. My question is around Vanier School. At one time, they were quite involved. Are they still involved in this project?
Yeah, so we have teachers who will come in with classes here and there, but not in a very consistent way. And so what we found in general with schools is that building it is easy, but maintaining it is like quite hard, especially with the structure of the school year, May or June, July, August, not in school. And so the maintenance piece is super hard for schools. And so having Lush maintaining the space, cultivating it, keeping it as a space where a teacher can come in and it's ready to go instead of just a pile of weeds is very helpful, that kids can actually see the utility of the space instead of just this like, insurmountable, challenge. So yes, they are involved, but here and there, sort of piecemeal, not super consistently.
Thanks for that. And Director Moore.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I love the multi-generational aspect and the day camps. So currently you've been kind of promoting those through Lush, but you're going to put them in the rec reporter. And so do you have capacity to, putting them in the rec reporter will probably garner a lot of attention. I'm just wondering, are you planning to expand those day camps or have more participants or stick with sort of the same number?
Yeah, we've capped it at about 14 kids per session. We could expand depending on interest. We've also offered 2 additional camps this year because we're partnering with the Rec Guide. So in previous years it was 2, this year it'll be 4, or in 2026 it'll be 4. So yeah, we'll probably sort of keep that numbers cap similar, but offering more sessions will sort of offset that interest.
That's great. It's really neat to see so many youth interested in that kind of activity. And it does, I think, just expand that definition of recreation and how, I don't know, I've been doing a lot of gardening in the last year and it's definitely exercise, even though we don't think of it the same way as other forms of exercise, but it does, I think, fit a need for people that need a different kind of recreation and exercise or community engagement, like kids that maybe are not going to, play an organized sport or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. And I agree. It's it's a really multifaceted benefit facility like this. There's a lot of touch points, and I think you did a really nice job of touching briefly on those. The other thing is it's really nice to see this site being utilized to a higher potential than how it was before Lush took over. I have seen the change over the last couple of years, and it's in a great spot for how it's being used and how it connects with the greater purpose of the exhibition ground site. So one question I had is Lush currently receiving other funding for other projects currently from the CVRD? I'm wondering if this is the only ask or if this is an ask separate from other funding that's currently, maybe you know this off the top of your head.
This is
maybe
a great Marita question.
Yeah.
Is she still on the Zoom? No. Okay. I'm sorry. I really don't know.
That's okay. I'm sure when we have this request come back that staff can answer that in any case, but I thought you may know the answer to that. Looks like Director Brown would like to say one more thing before we move along, so I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on that. I think it's paused. I don't know whether this past year the Food Policy Council got CVRD funding, but certainly in the past they have. So I think this is just a really great example of how a partnership agreement can cover a variety of actions and projects from a partner like Lush or the Food Policy Council or both. They get together.
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
We do have a partnership agreement with the city of Courtenay to manage this garden right here. So yeah, our hope is for something similar where there's this ongoing pledge for support. That just helps our annual operating costs.
Yeah, I certainly see the rationale there. Yeah, so I'm not sure if you've presented here and know the process, but basically we received the request and have an opportunity to ask questions of you and staff, and then this will come back to a subsequent meeting for further discussion and a decision.
Perfect.
So thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks so much.
I don't know that we did a motion for receipt there, or if we need to. Thank you. And any opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that's carried. And our next item is the Comox Valley Farmers Market delegation. We have Twyla here. Should we do a motion for receipt? Thank you. Good
Awesome.
afternoon.
Thanks so much. Just wait for the presentation to pop up. It's great to be back here today to provide an update on our 2025 season, as well as providing an update on our plans for a permanent year-round location. So for those that don't know, my name is Twyla, and I'm the general manager for the Comox Valley Farmers Market. And before we take a deep dive into our 2025 season and the discussion around the permanent location, I wanted to give a quick overview of the Farmers Market Association as a whole. So as a nonprofit organization rooted in agriculture, our mandate is to promote and support the economic health of local farm and food community and to educate the public on agricultural issues. All of the products at our market are made, baked, raised, grown, and wild harvested in the Comox Valley and Strathcona regional districts. And approximately 90% of our vendors reside within a 20-kilometer radius of the exhibition grounds. So when we talk about food miles, which is the distance the food is transported from the time of its making until it reaches the consumer, is 20 kilometers. So that's pretty amazing when we're talking about that. We are a food-only, farmer-first farmers market. We are composed of about 50 to 60% farmers and the remaining bakers, processors, and herbalists, and that's our soap and body care products, as well as liquor vendors. We currently operate 3 markets, one year-round on Saturdays. We have a seasonal market on Sundays in the village of Cumberland, as well as another seasonal market on Wednesdays in the town of Comox. We also participate in the BC Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program, which provides $27 a week in coupons for young families, pregnant individuals, and seniors across BC to purchase fresh fruit, vegetables, meat, eggs, nuts, and dairy over a 16-week period. And our community partners here in the Comox Valley are the Comox Valley Healthy Families, the Mikisew Métis Association, the Upper Island Women of Native Ancestry, and the Cumberland Community School Society. And although the outdoor season is done, the program does continue until December 20th. So we don't have the actual numbers yet. Once we get them, we'll be able to have an idea of the distribution across all of the municipalities. So let's take a quick look at our 2025 season. It was another great year. We had 27 market days, an average of 48 vendors per day, with the highest being 52 and the lowest being 42. We had live music from 18 different local musicians. We had 24 different community tables. There was a large variety of products from arugula to zucchini and everything in between. We had kids' activity tables for 16 out of the 27 weeks. And on average, there were 1,800 plus customers per market day. And we held several events throughout the season. And although we are currently planning our season, we don't have any specifics yet, but we can say that it will continue in a similar fashion to the 2025 season. A permanent year-round location is something that's been talked about for many, many years. We have had ideas float around with structures just for the market, as well as shared with many groups. We've even had a location picked out and plans drawn up, but for a variety of reasons, nothing has come to fruition. So when we think about a permanent location, we can't ignore the fact that we have been in the same field, the market field, at the CD exhibition grounds since 1992. So nearly 34 years in one spot seems pretty permanent. This location has lots of room for vendors, for future growth. It has amenities such as electrical, water, parking, washrooms, as well as great customer experience with access to the market, to other events, and walking trails. So why don't we use this location year-round? During the fall and winter months between mid-October and the beginning of April, there is no protection from the elements, such as the wind, rain, and snow. And although some vendors are able to go outside, there are many that have products that just won't tolerate the conditions tolerate some of the weather conditions during the fall and winter months without some form of shelter. So this means that we would not have as many vendors and the product selection would be limited. Without some type of protection from the elements, specifically wind, it can also become a safety hazard for market vendors, staff, and customers due to blowing tents. And this is even with having the tents being weighted and pegged. In addition, customers are less likely to attend the market on days where the weather is less than ideal, especially if they have to be out in the elements to shop. All of this makes the market harder to sustain during this time. Another reason is the lack of reliable transportation. Although this is an issue during the, reliable public transportation. Although this is an issue during the summer months, it is more so during the colder and wetter months where customers would be less likely to walk in the elements to attend the market. For these reasons, we have been holding the fall and winter markets at the Native Sons Hall in downtown Courtenay. We started in 2001 with a small winter Christmas market, and then in 2008, 2009, we started going year round. We have now reached a point where the Native Sons Hall does not meet the needs of the market. Not only are we outgrowing the space, but the cost to rent the hall, which is over 70% of our rental fees, is not sustainable. A permanent location for the market is something that is not only on our minds, but also part of the larger community. This includes things like the CVRD with its agricultural plan. It's included as a high priority in 3.1.1, which reassess and prioritize the permanent location for a year-round farmers market infrastructure. It is also part of the City of Courtenay's OCP in their food systems policy, in FS2, to work on the Comox Valley Farmers Market, work with the Comox Valley Farmers Market Association to secure a permanent site and facility for its year-round operation. In addition, BC Transit has also have plans to extend bus service that would help more customers attend the market on Saturdays. Taking this all into consideration, over the last year and a half, we've been talking about getting our permanent location conversation started again. We began by talking to individuals and groups involved in previous attempts, as well as looking into building ideas. Our president at the time, Mary Jane Douglas, spearheaded this. Sadly, Mary Jane passed away this summer, but her legacy with respect to the permanent location lives on, and we are wanting to take it to the next steps to make this a reality. Here are some of our initial thoughts. It's important to note that we do not have any official drawings. There's no beneficial cost estimate. The images here, we're just throwing ideas on paper, but we're basing the concept on previous work, including costs, and adjusting things for things as inflation and newer information. So here are some of our initial ideas. We'd like to have a permanent covered open air facility for operation year round. The pavilion would include aspects of Comox First Nation cultural elements, as well as stewardship with the Solom River watershed. We'd like to have a facility for storage for gear. We'd like to work with organizations such as the Lush Valley Food Action Society for equipment or other storage. On non-market days, other groups would be able to rent the pavilion. There's already water and electrical existing on site. Now, if we take a look at dimensions, the Native Sons Hall is approximately 68 by 80 feet long, and this is external, the outside dimensions. Internally, it's about 57 by about 75 feet long. There's a lot of unused space for vendor, as far as the vendor layout goes. There's storage lockers, kitchens, washrooms, custodian rooms, stairwells, and electrical closets. Although we would have some storage and other parts in our pavilion, we would like to be able to minimize wasted space and maximize the layout that with the market that has the market logistics involved. So here are some examples of what we've been looking at. Gladstone Brewing Patio has sides that can go up and down for easy in the summer and in the winter, according to the weather. We also have Black Creek Community Center Pavilion, again with sides that roll up and down. And finally, the structure at the Pemberton Farmers Market. And although this is not used year-round, it doesn't have sides, we're just using it as an example of what other farmers markets are doing. So based on costs for the Black Creek Community Center Pavilion, which is similar to what we're looking at, and adjusted to account for inflation and other costs of materials, we're estimating about $800,000 to $900,000. We plan to look for grants to cover the bulk of this, but we're also looking for fundraising and in-kind sponsorship opportunities. The CVFMA also has a small amount of money that we'd be able to use to get the process started. Now that we have basic ideas and information, our next steps are to reach out to the CVRD, to the City of Courtenay, the Agricultural Land Commission, to discuss and to get support for the project so we can seek funding. We know that funding typically comes with a definitive timeline in which the funding must be spent. If we don't have support for the project for these organizations, it'll harder to get funding. This brings me to our ask. We would like to ask the CVRD for support in this project as it aligns with the agriculture plan, as well as to have assistance from and coordination with CVRD staff who are currently working with the ALC on changes to the market field. We know that there are upgrades planned for the market field, and it only makes sense that if we're requesting changes to the market field in addition to what has already been submitted, that we work together to ensure that we're not creating additional work or costs for all those involved, and that we can complete the work at the same time. Before I conclude this presentation, I want to say thank you and that we're grateful for the CVRD for their support of our market, and we're looking forward to working with the CVRD to make the market a permanent year-round home. Thanks.
Thanks for the presentation. It's great to see this concept advanced. I've heard a lot about the idea of where the market should be and how to address the needs of year-round weather. So it's great to see that there's some progress on that. And I'll pass it over to Director Grief for the first question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Twyla. Thanks for coming up here and pitching this. This is, I heard from Nikki Whitaker that the Comox Valley Farmers Institute in the minutes from 1984 was advocating for a farmers market. So we don't want to move too quick on this, okay? Yeah, year-round farmers market. We, as you probably know, with the agricultural plan, it speaks to using CVRD property for uses including an agricultural center or farmers building. Nothing of that magnitude would come in under $1 million, that's for sure. But at least it's recognized in the plan. And we have a brand new ag planner. Probably reached out to you already.
Yep.
I haven't met her yet, but hopefully she'll be unveiled here somewhere one day. My questions, because when you start talking about money and you start talking about government grants and such, we all know what's happening on senior government scale with the economy. So just for me, it seems to make a lot of sense when you consider how much you guys pay for the native sun's hall in the wintertime. My understanding is over $9 grand. Is that correct?
Closer to 12.
12 grand. So there's 12 grand right there. And the site fee for the exhibition ground site is kind of a wash. My understanding is that we kind of give you a grant and aid to balance it out. It's almost a total wash. So that's some money right there. So, if you start talking about some long-term borrowing to make this happen, because we don't really have an agricultural service. This is tacked on to rec. Now, sometimes I get looks around this table when I start talking about these kind of things because, they're quite willing to spend, tens of millions of dollars on a new hockey rink or new soccer field. But, my God, $800,000 for this, it doesn't compute. And I don't blame staff, but you got to remember the staff that we do have in this service, that's where they come from. That's what they're all about. So it's a misfit. I've said it's a misfit for over 10 years now. But I do think that if we take this in bite-sized pieces, if you take in consideration the 12 grand you give the city of Courtenay, no offense, but you have to, and the amount that we subsidize for the field, there should be some kind of business case we can work on with the CVRD, even inside this service that we're stuck in right now, where we can actually do this, because we all know that it's not just a nice thing to have, it's a need to have. We have farmers that basically live on subsistent wages that when you look at any money you make at all, it's minimal. We have direct sales is the way to go. You've got farm gate sales. you got this market, and you know, very little else really for the most part. So I know that when we had the pandemic, that a lot of the farmers couldn't even prove what was it, $5,000 a year in taxable receipts. So, you know, there wasn't even enough money coming in there. So it's the old adage of, you know, if you want to make $1 million in farming, start with 2 million. But I will push for it as hard as I can and see if we can get the gears rolling on this, because 1984 is a long time ago. Thank you.
It is. Thank you very much.
And I'll pass it to Director Moore next.
Great, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Twyla. Yeah, I agree that it would be best to find a home that is the proper home for the farmers market. Like many things we do, we use spaces for things that are not intended. And, you know, in terms of things like parking, we've already got lots of parking and space for the farm vehicles to come in, and it's just a much larger, more appropriate location. I know we've looked at some options in Courtney, but ticking all the boxes is really difficult. And I like the idea that it's more like an open air sort of pavilion with the option to lower the walls or whatever. And I see that the Black Creek Community Center is only 2,600 square feet. And Native Sons, as you mentioned, is about 4,300, I believe. And so I guess my question is, what do you think would be the adequate square footage so that you would be able to have all the vendors under one roof, as opposed to Native Sons where they're spilled into the parking lot, as well as space for some storage or whatever other needs that you have?
I think something similar to the outside dimensions of the Native Sons Hall. We take away all the space that is unusable space with the vendor layout. The Native Sons Hall is a great place, but it's not made with a layout for specifically the farmers market. So if we're able to have drawings that are able to minimize the amount of wasted space and maximize our vendor layout, I think that we can fit quite a few more in there. One of our visions is to also have the sides that can roll up so we can fit some of the trailers in there during the winter as well. So I think there's ways that we can make it work, or maybe we have a separate awning come off the front where we can put trailers and stuff so we can expand it during the winter. So there's different ways that we can do to use that existing size. I think the Native Sons Hall, the outside dimensions with a consideration for space will be enough for us to have what we have existing as well as expand for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other, just a quick follow-up if I may. The other piece is that, you know, this is City of Courtney building regulations, etc. And I think with this type of building would also alleviate some barriers, because it's not, it looks like it's a dirt floor or something like that. So there may be some ways to avoid, as you know, as much of the complicated floodplain type regulations. I don't know, these would be questions to ask further, but yeah, I'll look forward to see what other comments folks have. But those were my main questions, was just about the amount of space that you would need. Thanks.
And Director Arbour.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the good presentation and background. I don't agree with everything that Director Grief said, but actually we agree on the substance here, absolutely. And where I do agree is we did put $8 million into the new artificial turf field at that's going to come in at Vanny. It's currently being built. And that was about $50 per residence per year for the next 10 years across the valley. So if we had the same group, which is us, putting in 800,000 under a 10-year agreement, that would be about $5 per household, and for the next 10 years. So that's my rough math. I'm not seeing Lucy react strongly to my math, but anyways, the staff would come
I
up
think
with a
you're off by a
report
few million on the cost of the turf.
of the turf.
Yeah.
It's more than $50 per home.
Well, it's a lot less than $8 million. The cost of
The new turf field?
Yeah.
Oh, 6 million, six and a half million, sorry. So that even, does that worsen our numbers or improve them? Anyways, it wouldn't be a lot of money is what I'm trying to say, to solve a problem that's been around since, or an opportunity that's been around since 1984. So I don't know if that's something we would look to do in this financial plan. And I don't know if we would need to go to a peer referendum or something like that, which I'm sure it would be supported. But under short-term borrowing, there might be an opportunity to put that in our financial plan as our last piece for this term. And I would definitely be with Dr. Grieve to see that as a good thing to get the balls rolling. I guess the only problem is the ALC and all that stuff, right? That we may not know for a little while. And but if that proved promising, we are entering budget next year, and in other places I've said that our mandate is out and we're done. But honestly, when I got elected in 2018, I thought we would have a permanent space and with some shelter for the farmers market by much earlier than now 2025, 2026. So it feels like it's within the purview of this board to advance something like that. And I know for certain almost that even residents in Fanny Bay and Hornby Island would see the value. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Yeah, I guess one question I have around it is just, what we're envisioning in terms of what the current use is versus how this would change the site. So there's like the possibility of adding a structure to the current field that would be approximately the same footprint as the Native Sons Hall downtown. So we're not talking about a small change, and I would also involve, a concrete pad, I would assume, from the pictures. Yeah, I mean, a $1 million structure for a structure that size, I would be pleased if it came in at that price. I mean, I'm not an expert, but everything seems to be about 3 times more expensive than I expect it to be, and so that seems a little bit low to me. But yeah, so in terms of that site and that structure, is the vision to have that in the middle of that field currently, or what, for siting and location, what is the how is that going to fit in based on current use? Because I guess where I'm thinking is that it's mainly addressing the winter need, but it will have a big impact on how that's used in the summer. So
Yeah, correct. We will be able to make use with it in the summer. So we could do things like, instead of having our musicians on a separate trailer, we would be able to incorporate the music into the pavilion. We'd be able to have maybe seating in there, hold events there during the summer, and maybe have certain amount of vendors in there as well. So we would have to obviously figure it out logistically, but we are looking into ways to make sure that we maximize the use for the summer. So it's not just used in the summer, it also is used in the winter as well, so we can use it year round. As far as where it would go, we'd have to work with the ALC on that one. I know there's been discussions about upgrading the market field. That field has been needing an upgrade for a long time. It's very uneven. It's not very accessible as far as individuals with mobility issues. There's no drainage on the field. So in some times of the season, especially earlier in the season, it does get quite wet in places. So the field does need a little bit of an upgrade. So in talking with the ALC, we'd probably figure out the best way to make the most of it. Maybe it is taking part of the parking lot and part of the field, and so it goes on the end. Maybe it's in the center. There are things to consider. There's a creek running there, so we have to make sure that we keep back from that. So there are several things that we'd have to do. We'd have to take a look and see what the size works with what the ALC, that's going to be the sticking point right there as far as what we can and cannot do. So we need to talk to them first. We know that CVRD staff are already working with them on the market field renovations. So if we can kind of coordinate, that will help decide what is best, and maybe we have to change what we're thinking in our vision, but at least it gives us a starting point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like I had a subsequent while I was listening there, and I've just totally lost what I wanted to ask there. So maybe I'll pass it back to the board. Director Brown.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, great. This is a great movement forward, Twyla. Thank you. I think the details of what the structure looks like and how it functions seasonally are relatively simple to work out, and like Twyla said, dependent on the input from the ALC. I think definitely not having concrete is going to help our case with the ALC. And I just think that it would behoove us not to put money forward now for this future build, even in a small way, to support the farmers market. This, as everybody has said, has been going on, this conversation, for a very long time. And the farmers market is one of our primary partners that are providing food security to families here. Anyway, one of the questions I had about your presentation was not about the permanent market site, but around the food security piece. And I know you don't have the full numbers of the coupon program, but I think you might have numbers of like how many families and seniors you've been serving all summer.
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it's in
Okay.
the neighborhood of 100 and some odd families with closer to several hundred individuals. We are close to $85,000 in coupons. That's how much we're close to 100% redemption right now. We're sitting about 90%. We can get close to 100, and that's because we are the farthest southern north market, or the southernmost northern market on the island that is open year round. So we often have individuals coming from Port Hardy or Campbell River or any of the other areas where their market is already closed. So it is not unusual for us to be over 100% redemption. Right now we're sitting around $80,000. And it's supposed to be closer to 84,000, 85,000.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so in that, along with the synergy with the presentation we just heard from Lush and having that garden there, I just think this area could become a really fulsome programming space for food security in the valley, and I'd happily support that, both financially and however else we could. Oh, I guess the other question I have about the permanent site is this the best place for the farmers market, or is this the easiest place to locate? And have you, along with staff, looked at other locations at the exhibition ground that may or may not be better or worse? Like,
A combination of both, I think.
Okay.
It is the best place as far as a bunch of other logistics are concerned. We already have water and electrical existing on the field. We've been there for a while, so people know where we are and know where to come. So it's not really a change for us. And when we look at other parts of the field, I think, or parts of the exhibition ground, sorry, it is the one that gives us the most diversity to work with what we have and to build on. So I think it's probably all around the best place for it to be. But we are open to talking to staff once we get into more details about what would be the best place. But in our initial conversations, that seems to be the best.
Great, thanks. I know the barrier in the past was always that Music Fest needed it for parking, and now that's no longer the case. So it's free. So that's great. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Director Hardy.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm one of the few as well that are quite keen on seeing the farmers market have a permanent home. Pardon me. And the proposed $1 million investment into a facility, I think, is a great idea. The question I do have for the farmers market, or maybe in the CVRD staff, is, do we have any information with regards to what the economic impacts are from having the farmers market operating on an annual basis, and how much employment comes from these activities of putting on the farmers market? Thanks.
I can answer from the farmers market side. Although we don't have the final numbers yet for 2025, we still have 3 more markets left in the season. We will be over $2 million, and that's direct gross sales, customers to vendors. That's just the immediate economic impact. If we look at other factors such as employment and a few other things, the benefit of vendors purchasing from other vendors or purchasing product and ingredients and inputs from other stores locally, is going to be significantly larger. Using the 2023 BC Association of Farmers Markets economic impact study, we can use their factor of 1.5 to give an economic impact, and that does not include the spillover effect of customers coming to the market and then going to other places to purchase other things. So $2 million is the base minimum for 2026 and or 2025, and it's only growing.
So I guess if I can have a follow-up there, Chair, and I guess my comment would be the return on the investment of putting in such infrastructure to have a permanent home site for the farmers market. I think, long story short, it would look like from an economic perspective, a great return on the investment. So those are just some of my thoughts and opinions. Thanks.
Thanks for that. And we have one last speaker, Director Moore, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I guess you just touched on this, Twilight.
Oh, sorry.
I forgot to turn on your mic. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't even realize. Someone asked the question, I can't remember who, about the, Director Brown, around other sites within the exhibition grounds. I guess that's something, depending on what direction we go in, could be explored a bit further in terms of looking at, don't we have some kind of staff initiative happening right now around the uses of all the grounds? So I guess, my question to staff is, when do we expect to have some information on that planning?
Thanks, Director. And as you know, this is a delegation, so really the focus is on the delegation's presentation and the questions and answers. Staff would be looking to work further with Twyla and Farmers Market considerations, and especially through the budget discussions that are up and coming. As well, we do have a site strategic plan, exhibition ground site strategic plan, and Doug DeMarzo, our General Manager of Community Services, might be able to provide some context around that. That would all be part of the discussions, I think, with Twyla and her team as we look at the potential of a permanent structure. Doug, do you want to elaborate more on the site master plan? And I recognize Jen Zabindin is not here today as well, and Jen has a lot of history.
I don't really need a detailed answer. That's fine. Just that that work is happening. So that's fine. Don't need any detailed response.
Thanks.
Great question without an answer. Okay, well, I think we did wrap up the questions and have a good discussion here. At this point, the ask is fairly clear, and it's more around that coordination with staff and how this looks like from a land use perspective. So and again, we don't make a decision today, and I think it would be helpful to get some information back from staff, but I think you can probably read the room that there's some support for the farmers market here, and that the board is keen to see a solution found for this ongoing challenge around a year-round location. So thanks for coming today.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, and we'll dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And we'll move on to reports. Resolution status report. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. Any questions on the report? Seeing none, I'll dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed? And that's carried. And moving on to reports, we have an asset management program, a recreation department report for receipt.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to the directors for receiving this report. The Regional District Board has received a couple of reports on asset management, and we felt it would be important to share some more specific information around the program and the development of the program that relates to the recreation services in particular. So Trish Morgan is here. Trish is our Senior Assistant Manager of Recreation Services, and the staff report provides some of that context. Trish has a few slides here to speak to. We don't want to take up much of your time because we know that the board has had some considerations on this. But again, this was an important discussion, I think, to have with the Recreation Commission itself. So Trish, over to you.
Thanks, James. All right, moving ahead. So today I'm going to talk about why the Recreation Department needs a formal asset management program. This will include a review of our current state of asset management, the benefits of formal asset management program for recreation, how investment into the program will support the service, and what is needed to increase sustainability, both operationally and financially. So first, just a little overview of some of the current challenges. Our facilities are aging. The Sports Center just celebrated its 50th anniversary, and the Aquatic Center is 26 years old. That's the new pool. We call it the new pool, but it's 26 years old. So it's not so new anymore. Both are at significant asset renewal milestones, and many of their asset components have been stretched beyond their useful asset life. We have no dedicated staff for asset management. Our team is focused on day-to-day operations, leaving little time for strategic planning, tracking data, and record keeping to inform decision-making. We also lack a computer system to track and analyze asset conditions, so decisions are not data-driven. This reactive approach means we plan capital replacement and maintenance using high-level assessment data and fix problems as they occur, but this is the most expensive way to manage our assets. And I'm going to give you just a couple of examples. This first one has to do with the air handling unit. So in the report, in the staff report, there's an example in there of some challenges we've been having with one of the air handling units. So with this, when we receive 19 or to a home inspection. So it's assessed on what the assessor can see, but it doesn't go into any detail about the components. It's a snapshot in time. It doesn't look at any of the components, and there's currently no effective way to track them. This piece of equipment should have been replaced somewhere around the 15-year mark, but our awesome team has used their know-how, their skills, and their experience to extend it to 26 years. The challenge is that the different components we're having challenges with, and we're having to find replacement parts for, and we're having to engineer new parts for them because, again, it should have been replaced many years ago. If we could have changed it, or it would have replaced it a few years ago. When we get, again, that condition assessment, it's kind of like the last 2 pages in a book. We can see where we are today at that end, but we don't know the story leading up to it. All of the other pages in the book are lost. They're stored elsewhere, and they're not pulled together to make a complete story. And what we need is to start building that full story on all of our critical assets. And that's kind of the state of the asset management program we're in now. Another example is the challenges we have financially. So within the current financial plan, Recreation Services faces a significant challenge. Approximately $14.4 million is needed over the next 5 years for life cycling at the sports and aquatic centers alone. This includes replacing assets at the end of their life and electrifying units to reduce carbon emissions and meet the CVRD's climate targets. This is the minimum work required to maintain existing service levels. However, we have little reserve funds and no time horizon to save for the work. And as a result, the only option is going to be debt funding for this regular life cycling. So without a thorough asset management structure, it's difficult for us to prepare for these decisions and provide meaningful information for decision making. As the Commission knows, we've applied for both provincial and federal grants. They're both in the assessment phase. One of them has been in assessment for over a year. And when I followed up with them last, they were not able to give us any indication of when they may be able to tell us yes or no. But I can tell you that in completing those applications, especially over the last 5 years, there's a much stronger focus on asset management. The province and the federal government, they want to feel secure that if they invest in our community, that we have a plan to maintain and replace our assets, and that we can fund the plan and that service will be sustainable. And so they're asking a lot more questions than what we had in the past. In the past 17 years, when I've been doing this, I think we had 2 questions, and I think they're in the last application that we did, it was probably 25 to 30 questions about it. So how is investment going to support the service? So although there's a cost to implementing the service or implementing the asset management program, in the context of the asset value, it's relatively low. So on average, it's about $185,000 a year, although we're still diving into those costs and trying to fine tune them, looking for savings where we can. It only represents less than 1% of the historic value or even the replacement value of the assets. So you might be wondering what we do now and how do we manage our assets? One director, I think it was Director Arbor, said in a previous meeting, we've always been managing our assets, and that's absolutely correct. We budget for it, we plan the work, and we execute it. The challenge we have now as the equipment becomes more complex and as the equipment ages and it requires more care and maintenance is that we lack the tools and resources to manage the assets as effectively as possible. We lack data and decision-making tools. In our current state, our operations managers and supervisors are responsible for all aspects of asset management, as well as the day-to-day operations, inspections, repairs, maintenance, and capital projects, and emergency repairs that are becoming more and more frequent. Because they're physically doing the work with our team, they're left with little to no time for planning, analysis, and tracking, and not to the level of detail that we need or want for decision-making. They're really doing the best with the tools they have, but at this point, it's simply a PDF checklist and a spreadsheet with condition assessment data. And that is, again, a snapshot in time at that moment when that piece of equipment was assessed. We're extremely lucky to have the team we have because they have so much experience and knowledge, but there's little documentation of that historic knowledge that they have. Every year they use that knowledge to try to connect the dots and look at the information we have and budget and plan the work appropriately. But without the proper asset management system and aging equipment, the decisions we make on an annual basis are not data-driven. Our team spends an exorbitant amount of hours dealing with emergency repairs, far more than they should, because it's difficult to analyze the symptoms of what may be a larger issue. If we have the tools and resources we need for proper tracking and analysis, they would be able to take a more proactive approach. And so in this slide, you can see the operational team, again, is doing all of that work along that work continuum. But what does it look like with some investment? So this is where we see ourselves going if we have an additional FTE, the asset management branch specialist, a computer maintenance management system, and other tools and frameworks that will come with the development of the overall asset management program for the CVRD, things like risk assessment tools, ongoing condition assessment frameworks. We'll have the ability to collect and record data, track our assets and their critical components, look for trends, connect the dots, and start to transfer some of that important knowledge that our staff have in their heads into a system where it can be shared in the future. We will be able to build better long and short-term plans based on more reliable data, create preventative maintenance plans that can be tracked, and we can look at their progress over time, develop formal asset management plans, track our maintenance history, life cycle costs, risk and condition assessments, and provide data-driven analysis for capital planning and accountability. The impact on our team means it will free up the managers and supervisors from daily asset tracking and allow them to focus on executing the capital projects, our routine maintenance, staff development, and regulatory compliance. The asset management specialist will play a key role in supporting our team to sustainably and proactively manage our assets. In short, we've always managed our assets to the best of our ability, but the growing complexity and the age of our equipment demands a more data-driven approach and a more proactive approach. It requires us to have the right tools, resources, and dedicated support to ensure sustainability and efficiency moving forward. So this is a slide you saw in the last presentation to the board. Just a reminder of all of the next steps. Staff will summarize the discussion from the CVRD board meeting on October 21st and November 25th, along with feedback from all of the December committee and commission meetings, and present that information to the board in January. And then at that time, the board can consider options related to the asset management program, including either a scaled back or phased approach. And as the proposed 2026 to 2030 budget is scheduled to be published during the week of January 19th, any decisions by the board will not be reflected in the proposed budget, but it will be incorporated into the recommended budget that'll be presented in late February and early March. And that's the end of my presentation. Is there any questions? We also have Cecil Vaughn and Mike Morrissey here, who are our operations managers, who are in the trenches every day and are helping us to keep the service afloat, especially as our assets age.
Thanks for the presentation, and I'll pass it right over for questions. Director Arbour.
Yeah, thanks for this presentation, and I like the level of depth that you went into in terms of the impact. But then I ended up of two minds on it, which is one, the air handler example that you gave, which was shown as an example where, you know, we had a failure and it had impact on operations. But at the same time, in the same story, you said we already extended its life from 15 to 26 years through work. So I'm trying to figure out what's broken in our asset management, because we've almost doubled the life of this asset already. And the other piece I'm missing is, like, the board started the condition assessment in 2018. Like, we put in place some, I guess, basic asset management blocks through the recommendation of staff. And then a couple of years ago, or was it just last year, you know, we approved a fairly significant budget for decarbonization of a lot of our facilities and associated pieces of equipment. So in my mind, I was going that exercise alone would start to rejuvenate our systems. And I'm not an expert in heat exchanges and all of that, but I'm a little more expert in, like myself, moving to an electric car, which has much fewer components. And I'm just wondering, in that broader context, yeah, what is fundamentally changing with this decision to bring an AM specialist? And my last point, maybe what didn't help consideration, is that we're asking for 3 AM specialists all at once, at a time where staff is also asking for 15 new position potentially, and with a list of about 30 or 45 behind. So I'm being hard on every position. I don't want the asset management to be labeled as an anti-asset manager, but I'm just digging deep into every position that is being offered, because I guess the air handler would be a good example. For me, I have a different read on that we already doubled. So kudos, our staff is doing an amazing job. There's some key replacements coming. I'm just trying to figure out why we need a permanent position, somebody that will have to carry for a very long time in that role.
Through the chair to Director Arbour, I think one of the challenges that we have is we do have some big capital projects planned. We know that there's certain things that have to be replaced. This air handler, had we had some better data, probably would have been replaced earlier, because this year it's causing so much problems. It is one of the centers, if not the center, of a lot of the closures at the aquatic center, and we're having to cancel programs, swimming lessons, shifting a lot of things around. And again, we don't have that data. So now we're looking forward, and we are looking to replace those items that, based on the decarbonization plan, we've got a schedule for those. But we didn't do a huge deep dive into the condition. Our focus was, how can we decarbonize? So, you know, again, without being able to track it, we still don't know the health of those. Our team is amazing. They have stretched it very long, but, and Cecil and I were talking about it the other day, it's kind of like, if you have one house and you have a roof, you know it's going to last 25 years. You know that your hot water heater is 10 years. Your heat pump might be 10 or 15 years. But what happens now that you've got 25 of those, and trying to track them and keep track of them, and they're different makes and models, and how do you replace them, and how do you know when you have to do that? We don't have that, nor do we have the ability to do it, because right now we're just trying to keep the wheels on the bus and keep the services open and going. I think that's 2 of your questions. It's okay. Okay.
It's a maximum of remembering 2 questions
Okay.
at a time. I'll pass it to Director Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sharon. Thanks so much for the presentation. Certainly, it's been interesting to be thinking about asset management in a couple of different contexts recently, and I know we'll have more next week. And I guess I'm just going to, my kind of overview thought is I continue to wonder whether the model that we're choosing, sort of distributing it, is the right way and the most efficient way for the regional district to move forward. The model that we're considering at this point does seem to involve duplicating a number of tasks in different areas, like sort of framework and methodology design, CMS and city works configuration, training and change management, developing reporting standards and dashboards. And I guess I make a bit of an analogy. All analogies are rough. Is to human resources. We basically have 2 resources. We have people and we have things. And human resources deals across everything we do with a similar type of resource, people, distributed in different places, doing different things, in different functions and services. And I think that my instinct at this point is that we would achieve greater efficiency if we took a similar type of model to asset management than had the sort of the main policy pieces centralized, done once, and then it be a way, something that is then distributed as and when necessary to each of the areas that it serves. And I'd like to see when we sort of get more sort of work done into the new year, some sort of model of that being sort of gamed out, so we can get some sort of a sense of what the shortcomings and or benefits would be of that. But anyway, I'll kind of leave it there, but keep thinking about it as we move through the other reports coming next week.
Go ahead.
I think I can probably start and maybe Lucy wants to finish, but that's exactly the model that we're looking at, that there will be this centralized system and that not every department is not going to be creating or recreating the wheel. So it will be standardized across the board. We will have one condition assessment framework. We will have one risk assessment framework. And then the asset management specialists will be using those standardized processes and templates to help those departments manage those. And they're also going to be key and integral partners in developing those too and providing input into them. So for the case of recreation, that staff member would be working with the others and working with the consultants to build something that'll address what we need in recreation. But just same as the other asset management specialists would be looking to do so for water, wastewater, and solid waste. So we can come with something that's going to be comprehensive for everybody and consistent, but also meet our needs as well. And I don't know, Lucy, do you want to add to that?
Thanks through the chair to the director. Thanks for the question, and for sure we can bring some additional information when we come. And the only thing that I would add at this point to what Trish has provided is that we did at the onset, when we were studying how we were doing things now and moving forward, do we take an approach that's fully centralized, or do we take a fully decentralized approach to doing asset management, or is it something in the middle? And I'd say that where we landed and what we felt was best for us to accomplish this right now is the someplace in the middle. So where there are many, many components that are centralized to rolling out an asset management program. And, and that relates to us developing similar frameworks for condition assessment, for risk assessment, how we're going to do level of service, how our asset management plans are going to be built together. And that core central asset management department is going to coordinate all that and roll it out to everybody and keep that consistency across the board. From a resource perspective, you see that we felt that the decision with these 3 asset management specialists was best served to start to embed those into those departments that they're going to be working with. And there's lots of synergies in that because they're there sitting with the operators, et cetera, and the whole team. And I think that in that type of model helps them to really understand more how they are taking care of those assets to a deeper level in those departments. And it likely helps them as they're collecting data and understanding the data, et cetera. So those are the models we took. Absolutely, we can share more of that, and really would appreciate any other input and feedback into that. And the other piece that's big, that is a large cost, is the cost of technology. And we made a clear decision at the onset as we brought our steering committee back together that we have one enterprise system to do our CMMS, and that's CityWorks, and that's the only system that we're going to use. So with each department coming on, fortunately or unfortunately, it just is that there's always a cost for onboarding them onto the system, which generally runs us a couple $100,000 with each one of those departments. But it is centralized from the perspective, it's one system, our data sits in one area, and we all have access to it, and we all use it in as similar ways as possible. So that's my two thoughts to what Trish provided.
You had a subsequent?
Yeah, thanks so much. Absolutely, and I agree. Certainly, there are two poles, and I realize this is not attempting to be completely decentralized. There are a lot of really I think great elements of centralization and efficiency. I'm just thinking as we sort of move on to the next step, whether would like us to explore whether a greater degree of centralization, where we are noticing that there are duplicated processes of any kind between the different areas, to look at that and see if that might allow us to get away with slightly less additional staffing, or might allow us to more effectively reach kind of the key performance indicators we're looking at. I guess that leads me to another question, but that's something I'll ask in a second. But thanks.
Thanks for that. And we'll go to Director Brown online.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Director Cole-Hamilton, for asking some of my question. I'm thinking along those same lines. So when the first presentation came to the board, I heard around the table some suggestions to find ways to stage this or make it more affordable, rather than bringing on, I think it was 5 employees total right away. I am still thinking that. I think we need to actively manage our tax increases, and I am worried about this coming forward in the financial plan the way the board saw it the first time, with the 5.5 million or whatever it is cost associated with it. And I think the board is fully in support of asset management. We don't need more presentations telling us why this is so important. We understand why it's important. We are asking staff to come back to us with different ways of doing this so that we can not spend so much money in it and still be effective. And so are there ways to roll it out differently? Could we have one asset management? This has already been said, sorry, I'm repeating myself, but one asset manager that has that capacity. We get the system, and then we gradually work through the departments to bring those assets online. I understand that, everybody wants to have the best possible program. We all want to do the best job possible. But in the current economic context and just the uncertainty with which we are moving forward, I think we need to scale this back. And I'm hopeful that staff can bring us some options to show us different ways of doing that, and further explain exactly what these positions are going to do. So if we need an asset management specialist, are they able to share that information and build that capacity in departments as they go around showing them how to use the new computer program? I can't remember what it's referred to, whatever acronym. There just has to be more efficient way. I'm just looking for more efficiency here, along with the other staffing increases that we're being asked about. I think this is just it's a lot.
Thanks. If I can, Chair. So certainly the idea of staged or phased approach, or a slower rollout of the asset management program is what we are looking to build into those options that we would present in January. Given that so much of the specific work related to a program rests with the individual committees, commissions, rather than the board as a whole, we thought it would be important to share that here. And I heard some positive feedback around the level of detail shared, and in fact, maybe in some cases some more detail. So when we think forward to the water, sewage, electoral areas committee, we don't want to repeat the same messages that we've been sharing in the last couple of board meetings. We do want to share specific information to those services. And I hear you when you say you understand the value of asset management in the program. So, but what we're trying to do is develop those options for January. And it may be a case that some services do not progress at the same pace as other services. It may be that the overall program is rolled out at a slower rate. And that's what we're trying to understand is where those options lie. So this is all really positive feedback. We appreciate the discussion, and I know it's third time in as many weeks, it feels like, and we're going to do this again next week with most of you. So we're really trying to provide new information and not rehash what we've been presenting before. So thanks, Director.
Thanks, thanks, CAO. I think the general theme is that there's a concern that because we provide services in kind of the siloed framework of how we deliver the things that we've been tasked to deliver, that when we have a challenge that's been identified, sometimes the most I don't know, the thing that seems to fit the best is adding to that service. And I think that's has a lot to do with, how we're structured. And I guess there's a need to see whether or not that is the best way to roll it out. The other concern that I've had in having these discussions is bringing on 3 asset management specialists into an organization and not that large of a community. We may find ourselves having a difficult time in even developing that staff capacity quickly, which is one of the reasons why I do lean toward having something more centralized. You know, you look at the systems, some departments I would assume are much further ahead in asset management than others. I mean, I think recreation is probably one that would benefit more and more immediately, and maybe that would be a higher priority. I would hate to see us have a fairly easy time getting an asset management specialist in one area that is maybe not having these my concern in recreation is that we have these facilities that we don't have that much information about, and I can see that we don't really have robust capital planning and dealing with some of the challenges. So, but at the same time, maybe if we got good systems and better data management in place and brought things up to speed, maybe that resource would then shift to some other department that hasn't had that work done. So that's kind of where I see maybe an alternative in what I've heard from the board today. And I'll pass this over. Did you want to, you can respond if you want to. I'll turn your mic on.
Only have a tiny bit of information for you in that, from that perspective. And so far, we have our water services department, which you may be aware, that's our only department that's onboarded onto CityWorks. So they're the only ones that are operating from that perspective of work orders are getting created electronically, and that data has begun to be stored. And for sure, it was quite interesting. But all of us as managers across the board representing the departments, it's a lessons learned exercise, and they were adamant on learning from what we've already been through from a water services perspective. So each time that we do onboardings and get going, we are absolutely learning from that, and the departments benefit from that as we go. So as we keep going down the road with sewage treatment scheduled next, for example, there's lots of synergies and there's lots of efficiencies, I'll say, that come into play with that as we roll forward with the next department, and that'll just keep happening and keep happening. And our ideas are absolutely that we start to build our internal skill sets, and then we're less reliant on the very expensive consultants that are needed in some of those spaces, right? We'll probably still will for some areas, but as much as we can, we start to learn ourselves in the training that'll happen, and then we leverage that with each group and each group and each group. A little bit about how the roadmap is built right now is about how quickly do you want these departments to come up, and it's super difficult. Of course, we've been giving thought to options. It's super difficult to say which ones should go up and which ones shouldn't. Really hard. However, that's, a big part, obviously, of the decision of the board, all boards in total, in essence, of the speed in which you want to advance them. And yeah, that's a bit of the crux of it. And it's interesting to roll up all that specific information about this particular recreation services as well, because the issues, as you've mentioned, some of them and their constraints of the moment are pretty significant. And again, to where would if you were to order all 4 of those core services, where would they fall? It's really hard. It's really hard to do that, and that's the type of feedback that'll be really helpful from this board as well, and what staging may look like to you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, by centralizing it and constraining how quickly we're, bring ourselves up to speed, inevitably there will have to be some prioritizing that happens. So, I mean, that is something for us to think about in advance of the next conversations around it. And that also just reminded me of a point that I wanted to make in hearing about the challenges with the heat exchanger and how much time and energy have gone into maintaining that and keeping it functional. Is that getting back to the financial planning and how well we're projecting our financial need. I do wonder if part of why some of these larger assets are staying in service longer is that we just haven't planned early enough for their replacement. So by not having money on hand, and borrowing isn't something that we can do in short order, we end up running into these challenges because we haven't really funded our reserves properly. And that's kind of an additional problem in it. I mean, the data would have maybe pointed us there quicker, but without really putting that money aside, we can have the data that something needs replacing, but we still need to have planned the financial resources to do it. And I'll pass it to Director Cole Hamilton next.
Great, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I guess just one observation I want to make maybe before the January piece is that I think I'd find it more helpful unless is if we had more specifically defined performance indicators of how we're going to be assessing different models of asset management. It strikes me that kind of like 3 broad categories I can think of. One is capital costs, one's kind of operational maintenance, and the other one is kind of the reliability, facility downtime, service interruptions. And they all have their own differing values. And between O&M and capital, you can actually, because they're both dollar-based, you can actually weigh them against each other. But it would be really helpful in as much as we're able to try and anchor the analysis to some really clear, concrete categories that allow for kind of an apples to apples comparison of different models. Yeah, thanks.
Certainly, and this is excellent feedback. It's something we've also given some consideration to, and ironically, to provide some results around those KPIs that you're speaking to, we need the data to be able to do that. So there's some irony in there that we don't always have that data, partly because of our asset management program still developing. But those are some helpful suggestions, and we can try to articulate it that way.
Thanks for that. And Director Arbor.
Yeah, I guess maybe what's happened here is that I hear the CEO that we're developing options, but I think this came as one option at the last meeting, and the framing of it came as one option, as we're going to hire 3 staff, and like the board is reacting to that. I don't think we started from a place of, hey, let's have a board workshop on asset management because we haven't had one in 5 years, and what would be a good corporate way to go about developing that, right? So we started from a fairly aggressive plan from staff, and we're responding and criticizing it and trying to think if there's a better way, or most importantly, maybe a cheaper way to do it. And for rec, I guess, because that's the topic today. Yeah, I mean, I'm Okay, let me bring water for 1 second, because we did it in the rural areas where I agree with Director McCollum, like we've done some basic work. We hired some consultants to do condition assessment and priorities of needs. And from that, we increase our reserves. So we feel comfortable now. And when water comes with asset management, I'll be talking about the same thing, which is I don't think it's our more pressing need in the small water system to do asset management, because we have the finances. So when Dr. Cole Hamilton was about where are the triggers for replacements, right now at the Rec Commission, we feel like maybe the staff is extending the life, which is great, to 26 years, but maybe there's a trigger in our procurement team at the year 18 or 19, when you're supposed to go at 15, hey, you know what? Maybe we can stretch that out, but it could affect service, as we're seeing today if you go to 25. You mentioned there's 25 or 32 pieces of key equipment or systems that we're looking at. For me, the model we took, that's the question I'll have in January, the model we took with our water systems, which has probably a similar number of components, right? Let's do an assessment on that. And I know Mark Rutten talked about, yeah, but we need to go even more detailed. But at some point, it's like, what's the gain versus the extra expenditure and commitment that you're making as an organization? I think that's what we are questioning a bit. And I think when I see a chart of the big cost replacements and the current cost of the replacement, my mind doesn't go to management. My mind goes to reserves. And reserves will always be an estimate of the scale of replacement. Like, I don't need it fine-tuned, because we know that we don't control inflation, we don't control supply chains around the world, but we make a good buffer, which for me in the small water systems, I think we did it in the last 5 years where I'd like it to be, without hiring a permanent staff, right? So that's my message. I'd love to see some more options in January for sure.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. And I think it's been a good discussion, and that there's been some useful feedback provided, I'm hoping. The report was for receipt today and discussion. So there's really no decision to be made at this point. So with that, I'll dispense with receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried, and we'll move into in camera. I need a motion. Moved by Grieve, seconded by Cole Hamilton, or vice versa.